We're coming to you from the DraftKings.com podcasting studios. DraftKings.com, America's one-day fantasy sports site, where it's like a new season every time you play. DraftKings.com.
Now, the right time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio.
And ESPNRadio.com.
Look, I got to tell you guys right now, I have zero desire to be here today. And it's not because I'm not excited about sports and entertaining you guys. Like, I really am. Like, I'm always hopped up. I mean, can't you hear it in my voice? Can't you feel the excitement? Feel this passion. I'm overwhelming with all this passion. Anyway, as an American citizen, I'm not particularly interested in this Republican presidential debate tonight. And that's because the election is next year. Like, y'all know that, right? Like, I don't know if y'all heard, but the election is next year. Like, this isn't like cars where you can get the 2016 in 2015. You know what I mean? It's 2015. The election isn't until next year. Like, I don't really want to watch that debate as a citizen. I want to watch that debate just, like, as a purveyor of entertainment. I tried to watch that before we got in here because they said it started at 8:50, except they had to walk all the dudes onto the stage. Dude, it feels like the draft. Something that also shouldn't be on television. Like, I mean, it feels like the draft. Like, it is such a crazy thing to watch what I saw on this. I do wish I was there watching it. If you want to go watch it, I mean, don't. But, I mean, I'd like understand if you would. If like Shannon, I mean, you're a voter. You're registered.
Right. Well, we thank you for tuning in.
Yes, we do. We do. I'd also like to note, I just want to see, like, what interactions we have directly between Donald Trump and Ben Carson. That's all I really care about in the course of that. It's like the things that they say back and forth. Like the moment that Donald Trump looks at Ben Carson and says, hold on there, buddy, I think you're going a little bit too far. Like, that's the thing that I want to tune in on. Hey, I ain't getting too deep into politics on this radio station. This isn't what you're here for. But I got these jokes. Anyway, the telephone number is 888-729-3776. Hey, where are all you guys who told Tom Brady, hey, Tom, just give him your phone. What do you have to hide? Where are you guys? Because, look, the thing that Tom Brady didn't want to hand his phone over about, they didn't have anything to do with Deflategate. They had everything to do with real life. Real life. I got this lock on my phone for a reason, and it ain't because of Roger Goodell. Like, I don't know if that's how you get down, but that's me. Shannon, you got that lock on your phone?
Yeah, I got a lock, but it ain't for the same amount of shade that Tom Brady was throwing.
No, Tom Brady was throwing the shade, man, but I feel like Tom Brady was in a bad situation, right? So, basically, we found out that, through some of this paperwork that's come out with the situation with the footballs that weren't inflated up to regulation standards, we got to look at some of Tom Brady's emails, right? So, the week before the Patriots played the Broncos, Tom Brady sent an email to his childhood friend. And we don't get to see what the email was that Tom Brady received, right? We didn't see that. I haven't seen that anywhere. We just got the ones that Tom Brady has sent. And Tom Brady's email to the dude said, thanks, Papa. I've got another 7 or 8 years. He has 2. That's the final chapter. Game on. In reference to Peyton Manning, saying that Peyton Manning has 2 years left, where Tom Brady has 7 or 8 years left. Shannon, what do you think Bill Belichick said when he heard that Tom Brady has 7 or 8 years left?
Oh, really? When were you going to let us know this?
I don't even think he's like, when were you going to let us know this? I think his response was, so where do you plan on playing these other 6 years? Like, have you picked out, do you have a dream location? Is there someplace that you want to go? Somewhere close to home? I mean, you grew up in the Bay. Would you like to play for the Raiders? Because if you're trying to play football in 4 years, they're the only people that's going to be taking you.
Got this Madden you can play. That's about it.
Right. Well, what's Tom Brady want to do? Go to San Diego and they can give him Johnny Unitas' old number from when he went down there? Because, hey, man, the great quarterback on a team he shouldn't be playing on, just trying to hold on a little bit longer, is depressing. But that's an email that Tom Brady sent. And see, here's the thing about that to me, and this is kind of where I feel bad for Tom Brady in this regard, right? You know why he sent that email to his buddy, right? Because his buddy was hating. That's why. Your buddy was hating. Like, let me tell you something that's very interesting about now that I got on TV. Nobody ever wants to talk to me about the people on TV that they like. They just want to hate. Like, they just want to talk about the people that they don't like. Like, Tom Brady is the quarterback of the New England Patriots. I guarantee you nobody's sending him any emails talking about dog. Aaron Rodgers, man, ain't nobody as cold as him. Nobody's sending him any emails like that. Like, I bet all the emails that Tom Brady gets from his friends about football is all some form of shade. Shade about shame about other quarterbacks. You know it's got to be shade about those receivers. What do you think those emails look like after that Super Bowl when Wes Welker didn't catch that pass? You think people were telling Tom Brady, man, I bet you wish you had put that one on the money? No, they all sound like Giselle in there. Every single one of them. So we're getting Tom Brady's replies. But I have to admit, now that we have cracked the seal, shall we say, on Tom Brady's emails, I don't want the emails about the opponents. I want the emails about his teammates. Those are the emails that I want. I want the emails about Josh McDaniels. You know what I mean? Those are the emails that I want to see. I don't care so much about what he thinks about himself with regard to Peyton Manning. Because let me tell you something else I've learned about being on television. If you do television with somebody else, your friends hate on the other person. Like, they meet him and it's cool and everything like that. But like, other than Poppy. But beyond that, that's just how it goes. Like, when your friends talk to you about whatever they're watching on TV or whatever's wrong is not your fault. Like, that's why you can only take what your friends tell you with a grain of salt if you do anything in public. Because anything that happens is not your fault. Like, even if you're not the type to request that people fall in line like that, they're never going to be hitting you up. Like, your big brother might hit you up and tell you what's your fault, right? So I want to see the emails that Tom Brady's got to reply to about how the Patriots don't have anybody but Gronk that can catch a pattern longer than 8 yards. Like, send me those emails after those games. Those are the emails that I want to see.
After 2 or 3 Brandon LaFell drops.
That's right. Or please show me Tom Brady's emails about Jimmy Garoppolo. Please tell me what he's saying about Jimmy Garoppolo when Jimmy Garoppolo ain't there. That's what I need in my life. This old Brady man in search engine optimization headline does nothing for me. Like, bring on the real petty if this is what we're going to do. By the way, if you're Tom Brady and this email got out, you have got to be scared to death about what else somebody might have found, right? Because I think this is in the paperwork that the NFLPA lawsuit had. But, hey, man, there are a lot of things I'd imagine that Tom Brady wants nobody see any parts of. Like, hey, have you seen that crazy documentary on HBO about the Scientology?
Yes, sir.
You saw that one? I watched it last night. I'd never seen it before. Hey, man, I can't go to no church where they take notes. Like, I'm not really trying to go to a church anyway, but you can't be keeping a permanent record of me at church. Like, that can't happen at all. How can I feel safe at all? And that's what they were doing. It's like, how could they feel safe? That's what they were doing, the deepest, darkest secrets. So now we got Tom Brady's email, which is probably as close to a confessional as you're going to get, depending upon how you orchestrate your life. Ooh, what you think he said? You think he got any emails in there about Charlie Weiss? I mean, it's been a long time. But you think he got any in there about Charlie? I think some Charlie Weiss emails would be fantastic right about now.
Bomani.
Something very interesting. So I get to work today to do Highly Questionable, and I find out about something that I did not even realize, which was apparently the mayor of Boston is trying to make it illegal to use smokeless tobacco at the ballpark.
Really?
Yeah, now that's interesting because it's easier to ban smoking than to ban snuff, because the issue with smoking is the air is a public good, right? No one has ownership of the air. Therefore, the argument is you do not have the right to then taint the air for other people simply because you want to smoke. But with snuff, like if you're not spitting on the ground, there's no real issue there. Like, you can't really do that. So I come to work and I'm checking out a document that we had to read over about it. And it was interesting hearing some of the quotes from the guys who have been using smokeless tobacco for God knows how long. Like Shannon Madison Bumgardner said that he'd been using smokeless tobacco since he was in 5th grade.
Yikes.
First of all, insufficient daddy. Absolutely at play. Absolutely at play. 5th grade.
Jeez.
Yeah, man. I mean, I have to say, I never saw smokeless tobacco as being, and I grew up in Texas, just so you're clear. I went to school in a town with 1,500 people. So, like, I've spent plenty of time around a demographic that has a great affection for smokeless tobacco. Like, I've been there. No shame in it, anything else. It never seemed like the sort of thing that I wanted to do. But I do remember when I played baseball as a kid, I always wanted to look like I was chewing tobacco. Because all the dudes on TV had chewing tobacco, right? Like, let's think about some of the all-time great, just like all the chaw. Lenny Dykstra?
Oh, he was a great one.
Yeah, I sure didn't want to be like him, though. He's possibly my least favorite player in the history of baseball. Like, we're far enough removed from Lenny Dykstra being a baseball player that you can't think of a single positive thing to say about him. I'm trying to think, who else used to just have this the big old mouthful of chaw? Because they'd be out there with it, right? And you remember the Big League Chew, the gum that came in the same pack that Red Man came in, right? And it would be shredded and everything else. You get it, you put it in your mouth, it would lose its flavor real fast, but you would look like you were chewing tobacco. They put the bubble tape out, and the bubble tape was in a canister that looked like, a Copenhagen can. And when you play baseball, you put it in your back pocket, and you look like a baseball player. Like, I wonder how many people, like, once they got into baseball, like, that just seemed like something you do. Like, people who go to college and pledge a fraternity, because it's like, yeah, you go to college and you pledge a frat. Like, that's just what you do. Like, baseball's always been on that. They'll never be able to ban that. Like, they'll never be able to, but you got to be able to make a strong argument that they should, right? And part of why I say that is this. It's a bad look. Like, it is a really bad look. I asked this question. Just throwing this out as a hypothetical, because I'm really just throwing hypotheticals out because there's nothing in the news to talk about. But we'll just throw this out as a hypothetical. Well, hypothetical is not the right word, but either way. What would be the difference between instituting a dress code and telling guys not to chew tobacco? Like, what would fundamentally be the difference?
Well, the argument there with the tobacco would be the cancer implications with that being involved. As opposed to just the dress code and the appearance of the players.
Right, but here's what I'm saying. I think that people would make the argument that, like, trying to ban the use of smokeless tobacco is, like, infringing upon guys' right to basically do whatever they want. Right? Like, it's not hurting anybody but that person. But the reason I think that you make an argument for banning it is that it looks bad. The whole reason for putting in the dress code was that cats were looking bad. Like, they get into the podium, and they looked bad. Like, it was a poor reflection on the league. And, Shannon, you told me something. I didn't even realize that baseball has it where you can't, if you're a player, you can't have smokeless tobacco in if you're on TV?
Yeah, Major League Baseball have rules in which teams, they're prohibited from providing tobacco products to players and strongly encourage clubhouse attendants not to purchase tobacco for players. Also, players cannot have tobacco tins in their uniform pockets or do televised interviews while using smokeless tobacco, excuse me.
You hit him with that tobacco.
Yeah, real quick.
You hit him with that Becky. You in North Carolina, go on now. I guess Raleigh isn't far enough east for people to be saying Becky, but when you get to the 252 phone numbers, the phrase Becky comes up a whole lot more. Not to be confused with Becky. We're talking about Becky. But it is interesting, though, like even in this day and time, and I guess not as many guys use chewing tobacco now. But, man, that's got to be a hard habit to shake, especially when you get into the ballpark and all these other cats are doing it. Like, trying to quit smoking is one thing. Trying to quit smoking in the smoking lounge, entirely different ball game. Like, it's a room full of dudes that's dipping, and you the one that's trying to quit, and somebody's in there calling you a punk.
And especially when it's part of your culture as well. If you're a ball player and you've been a ball player your whole life, coming through these different stages, and that's been part of it, it's hard to now get to the big leagues and then stop.
Yeah, got to be. It's got to be. But, man, I can't imagine, like, if you're trying to quit that, especially when you see that snuff gets people young, man. Like, when the cancer comes and gets them, Tony Gwynn is dead.
Yeah, he was one too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's like Tony Gwynn. Like, the idea that Tony Gwynn is dead for people our age, like, and that's that dip. Like, that's what it is. So I would not be surprised at some point in the not-too-distant future baseball found a way to just, like, get this going. Because it's a hard thing to fight against, too. It's a real hard thing. Y'all can't stop me from killing myself. And while that is certainly true, I am not one to be all, what about the babies? I'm not that guy. I think that's an overwrought concern generally. However, I do know, and we all do know, that we have associated tobacco as being part of baseball. Like, as part and parcel of it. At some point, baseball might want to have to consider some culpability of what happens down the line from that. Like, not like I'm saying they should have to, like, owe somebody in a lawsuit or anything like that, but just simply understanding how things work. Like, simply understanding how these things going on, and simply understanding how many cats in their sport are probably doing this because that's what baseball players do.
Bomani.
He's one of the best sports columnists in the business. He writes for Yahoo Sports. His name is Dan Wetzel. Dan, what's going on?
What's up, Bomani? How are you tonight?
Man, I'm doing all right. Thank you so much for joining us. And you wrote a great column on Roger Goodell. Basically, after checking out everything that we've had so far about Deflategate and the tenuous place that Roger Goodell is in, why do you think the place he's in is tenuous?
You know, I really think after reading all this stuff that it's hard not to look at this and say a good commissioner, a good leader would have steered the NFL away from this dispute. The NFL just was not in position to catch the Patriots on this. I don't know what happened. I don't know whether the Patriots did or didn't do what they are accused of doing with the footballs. But we're 7 months in, and the NFL really still has no proof that the footballs were even deflated in a scandal about deflated footballs, let alone whether Tom Brady did it, who did it, what happened. And I believe they went in with a belief that the Patriots were guilty, and they spent the last 7 months trying to build the case backwards. And that has led to all sorts of really unprofessional actions that have gone on by the league. And I'm not really arguing the facts of the case or innocence or guilty. I think you can think the Patriots are guilty and still look at this and say, this really isn't how a well-run commissioner's office or investigative process would work.
So is it fair to say that the NFL's reports basically say, well, something seemed fishy, and that's enough for us?
Pretty much. And not only that, I think they know that they don't have a lot, and they've spent a lot of time from day one manufacturing either evidence or stories in the media that weren't true. And they really waged a PR battle, a political battle against the Patriots, and not any kind of reasonable case. So whether it's the day after telling the Patriots the footballs were deflated far more than any football was, or, the ESPN story with the 11 of 12 footballs being significantly deflated, 2 pounds or more, which wasn't true, but created this uproar and really made the Patriots look, when you heard that, you thought, all right, this is significant and this is purposeful. That story was just false. If they had told the story the right way, I think most people would have yawned. They went into this without any idea about ideal gas law or the science. They didn't know how to measure the footballs. They didn't have a lot of protocol. They never got anybody to flip inside the Patriots. I mean, they just never got anywhere. And, if it really comes to a head this week when what the NFL never thought would become public did, which is all the transcripts and emails of the Tom Brady appeal hearing. And when you read that thing, and I'm not recommending really anyone do it, it's 457 pages and plus 200 pages of documents or items and all sorts of stuff, but I've done it. It's just, the case is so weak. They misrepresent what Tom Brady says in their conclusions. There's just all sorts of procedural problems. You just look at this thing and go, this is just a total disaster of an investigation. And a good district attorney sometimes they might have great suspicions that someone committed a crime, but they say, I can't prosecute this case because we can't win. We don't have enough evidence. And that's what a smart and a good district attorney does. And that's the role the NFL is playing here. But rather than just admit that, they really just manufactured a PR case against the Patriots and tried to make them look as guilty as possible and hope the fans would just go with that. And many of them did.
We're talking to Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports. And at this point, you got to have to ask this question. How does Roger Goodell keep winding up in these situations but keeps drawing a paycheck?
I don't – well, I mean, he has other jobs other than this. And one thing is that he takes the heat. So everyone's yelling about Roger Goodell. No one's yelling about other owners and saying, what's up with your league? So he's kind of – you get paid to be the punching bag sometimes in these organizations. But, look, I'll give you an example on this. This is just stuns me that this far into this case this is going on. But, you know, Roger Goodell last week denies Tom Brady's appeal, and one of the central reasons why he denies the appeal is he says in his 20-page ruling, he says, look, Brady, in the days after the story comes out, Brady and John Jastrzemski, the equipment guy for the Patriots, are talking on the phone. He finds this very suspicious, and he says this cannot be explained as just a coincidence because Brady said during these conversations the only topic they discussed was preparing footballs for the Super Bowl. And when I read that last week, I put it in my column. I said, I can't believe this would be true. If that is true, it's extremely incriminating for Brady because it just doesn't make any sense if two guys are accused of such a big thing and there's a media firestorm that you talk every day and be like, oh, that just never came up. Of course it would come up. So it would be extremely suspicious and incriminating against Brady. When the transcript with the NFL comes out, you read it, on 8 different occasions, and maybe more in this transcript, Brady says, we talked about the Deflategate scandal. I asked him what was going on. We're trying to figure out what's happening. We hear the 11 of the 12 footballs. I'm worried about whether he's still got his head together. I asked him again, did he do it? Roger Goodell completely misrepresents what Tom Brady said. He said, we only discussed one thing. When you see the evidence, that's clearly 100% wrong. And so you sit there and you go, why would the commissioner and the NFL league office, with all their lawyers and all this stuff, do that? Why would they say that about Brady and try to make him look more guilty and just completely misrepresent under oath testimony that was sat 3 feet away from Roger Goodell? He knew Brady said it. Why did they misrepresent it like that? And that's the stuff where you just shake your head on this, and it continues to grow. And I get a lot of fans are kind of tired of it. And it's, well, the Patriots probably did it. Hey, the Patriots might have done it. But why in the world is the commissioner doing something like that against a player? And what player and what team and what owner could ever go into this process again and think we're going to get a fair shake?
All right, we're talking to Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports. Do you think there's any chance these two sides will be able to come to a resolution that doesn't require going all the way to the end of the court process?
I really don't think Brady's going to back down. I think at this point it's pretty clear the NFL has no additional evidence against Tom Brady. The case against him, look, there's suspicious things, but when it comes specifically to Tom Brady, they really have nothing on him. They have a pretty weak case. Now, they're not going to back down. I don't see Brady backing down. I actually think the tide of public opinion is a lot more questioning, did the NFL prove this? So I think Brady's going to fight it to the end, and he's not going to – I think his offer is going to be, you dump everything, and I'm okay with it, or I'll go to the wall with it and take my chances. Because if he hasn't backed down now, if I were him, I wouldn't back down at this point.
Well, also, how badly does the Players Association need a win on this one? Because this evidence is so thin, there's so little there. If the NFL can just write everything out however the way they want to at this point, then the question then comes up, what's the union doing?
Yeah, the union looks terrible in this. I mean, they weren't with Brady when he first talked to them. I mean, it's a look, a lot of this stuff gets procedural, and it's not the fun part to discuss. But at no point are the players ever told about this rule. let alone that this is something that you would be punished for. And, some of this is just workplace stuff, and every single office or every factory, every workplace in the country, you go in the break room and there's all those posters and you can't do this and we're equal opportunity this or whatever. Like that isn't, there's none of that when it comes to the equipment. So there's a lot of procedural issues. There's also the independence of the investigation. It's supposed to be an independent investigation by Ted Wells. Ted Wells finishes his so-called independent investigation, hands the investigation over to Jeff Pash, the general counsel for the NFL, who then provides editing notes for the Wells report. I don't know how you can make that and call it an independent investigation. There's so many little things in this thing when you read it, and you're just like, wow, that is really an aggressive tactic to try to catch somebody on this. And they really never got anything more than a guy called himself the Deflator. And, yeah, he went look, I'm not saying anything suspicious, but sometimes you just got to prove the case. And if you don't prove the case, it might be frustrating. I know it's frustrating. It's frustrating for law enforcement in a million cases, but you don't sit there and manufacture, misrepresent testimony, try to swing public opinion with fake stories, mislead the Patriots, put them on their heels. You don't do all that stuff. Particularly, this isn't a murder investigation. This is over the inflation level of footballs in a 45-7 games. I mean, this is just a bad hill for the NFL to fight on.
Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports. My man, thank you so much for joining us. I greatly appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Bomani. Take care, man.
Yes, sir.
Bomani.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Hey, man, I want to talk to you guys about something that I'm noticing in these athletic operations, which is it must be a lot of yes men. And the reason I say it must be a lot of yes men, because I got a couple stories for you where it becomes impossible to believe that nobody stopped and raised their hands, right? And these are forays, not quite into social media, but the social media space is what birthed both of these stories. Now, one of these stories involves Vanderbilt University, and the other story involves the Indianapolis Colts. I will start with the story about the Indianapolis Colts, where the Indianapolis Colts are trying to do something for people. They are giving away highlight DVDs from 2014.
Sounds good.
All you got to do is bring in your unused or expired prescriptions for safe disposal.
That sounds good, too.
So, you remember that one time? That one time where Jim Irsay, he's the owner of the Colts, he was riding around and he got picked up with bunch of prescription drug bottles and lots and lots of cash. You remember that?
This is the same organization, isn't it?
Yeah. How did nobody say, I think we need to find a different way to give back to the community? Whatever happened to a gun buyback? I don't know if a DVD going to be enough to get some guns, though. Like playoff tickets, you might be able to get some guns.
Right.
Yeah, but you got to give away game tickets to get guns. Or like a coat drive. Like a coat drive.
Right.
You got to give away tickets to get a coat. Like to get somebody's pistol, you're going to need to give away a little bit more than just a DVD. But y'all can't be the ones to be taking back drugs, man. Because on one hand, like I don't feel like Jim Irsay, Jim Irsay appears to have a problem, right?
Right.
And so I don't feel as though we should force Jim Irsay to perpetually live in the shadow of what appears to be a problem. Like, I think that that's wrong. I absolutely do. However, that's me speaking in a vacuum. We talking about the real world, all right? And on one hand, you could look at this and say, yes, look at the Colts doing something for the community. However, when you send out the tweet asking people to bring in their unused or expired prescriptions, it sounds a whole lot like, I don't even care if it's still good. Yeah, it's okay if it's a couple days bad, right? Like that uncle of yours may not even be your uncle. You may be that guy. Like what? That milk 2 days? Oh, it tastes different, but it don't taste bad, right? Like that's how it sounds. Look, I'm not the one that made it that way. The whole reason that they had to be like, ooh, I don't know if this is a great idea. The whole reason people said this is because that's what people were thinking about when they saw that. Don't blame me. I'm the messenger. Somebody at the Colts has to be able to tell Jim Irsay, say, bro, this ain't the way for us to go about this. Like, there's got to be a different way. It can't be this. By the way, I'd never heard of a drive like this before. You ever heard of a safe disposal drive for the medicine?
No, this is new.
Like I said, I mean, maybe I'm the one that's behind. Like, I sincerely don't know anything about this, but low self-awareness. However, Vanderbilt managed to top them. Okay? So, Derek Mason, he is the head coach at Vanderbilt. Okay? And on July 21st, he sent a tweet that said, back in Nashville and the work never stops. This team wants what some say it can't obtain. Sorry, we don't need your permission. It's a fair, uplifting quote, right? And apparently somebody at Vanderbilt was like, yo, we can make a slogan out of this, right? Kind of how Shaka Smart, the whole Havoc thing. He said Havoc in his introductory press conference and then VCU, and then VCU, trademarked it and all of that. But it wasn't something that was necessarily meant to be a thing. He said it once, and then it became marketed, and it became a thing. That's how it goes a lot of times with the coaches. So Derek Mason said this, sorry, we don't need your permission, because they say this team wants what some say it can't obtain. And he's basically saying, hey, just because we got a team full of dorks doesn't mean we can't win some football games. I mean, not all the guys are dorks, but, I mean, every conference got a dork school, right?
You got to raise those GPA somehow.
Yeah, hey, Stanford's a dork school, but they're good, right? Anyway, Vanderbilt put out a tweet that said, we are relentless, tough, and intelligent, but the only thing in the picture is the slogan, we don't need your permission, which ignores the fact that Vanderbilt had a very high-profile sexual assault case very, very recently. Somebody at the office has to be able to say no. How did nobody at the office be like, hey, man, I don't really think that's the way for us to go about this? Nobody there can say no. Somebody at your office has got to be able to say no. How did nobody here? Actually, I think we need to say something involving affirmative consent.
Apparently, they got this new slogan through, and they didn't need permission.
Yeah, I tell you this. Somebody almost got fired for that. Y'all need to start asking more questions.
Bomani.
ESPN the magazine put out, at least it hit online today. I don't know when the magazine hit shelves, but a very interesting story that my buddy Tim Kuhn wrote about Arian Foster. And the focus of the story, well, I can just tell you the headline that was on ESPN.com. Arian Foster, I don't believe in God. Whoa. Now, it's very interesting kind of sort of to talk about this topic while there is a presidential debate going on that I think most of you would prefer to be indulging in than listening to this show, but it's whatever, right? The reason I mentioned the presidential debate is just to give you some perspective. I never thought I'd live long enough to see a black president. I did not. I'm only 34 years old. I saw a black president when I was 28. I did not expect to live that long, right? Showed up early. We will have a one-legged gay black president who doesn't speak English before we have a president who is an atheist in this country. Like, you could go tell people, generally speaking, that you believe in just about anything that calls itself some variety of religion. They may scoff at the religion that you happen to believe in, but they'll at least say that you believe in something. Like, that's the way I find that people tend to receive you. Now, with Foster, it's interesting because Foster kind of talked about the voyage that he had, to get to that point where he just decided. Like, this is a very interesting quote, I think. He says, everybody always says the same thing. You have to have faith. That's my whole thing. Faith isn't enough for me. For people who are struggling with that, they're nervous about telling their families or afraid of the backlash, man, don't be afraid to be you. I was for years. And I think that's kind of a fascinating thing to say, is that for a lot of people, the notion or the idea of having faith just isn't enough. Now, it's very interesting to talk about that to me in the context of sports because so much about sports, like in the rooting for sports teams, playing for sports teams, a lot of it is based on the idea of faith. Like, not necessarily the faith in a higher power, but a lot of it is based on the idea of faith. Like, all these losers that y'all root for, and y'all think that one day they're going to mess around and be good, if that ain't faith, I don't know what is. Sup, Cub fan? You still out there. You still holding on. And you keeping the faith. When sports teams get behind or it's not looking good, what do we start talking about? Keeping the faith. Like, that's a notion that's just all the way across the society. The idea that even though it looks like it makes no sense for you to hope for insert thing here, just go ahead and keep on doing it. And for some people, that's not going to work. It's interesting, though, being that guy who feels that way and publicly feels that way while playing on a football team. Like, I don't know so much about all these sports necessarily, but in my experience around football and football teams, look, man, if you're not trying to get a healthy dose of Jesus in your life, a football team is not the place for you to be. Like, it's just not. The Jesus is everywhere. The prayer that's going to go before the game and everything else. And look, honestly, whether you believe or not, I don't think it's the worst idea for you to pray before a football game. Like, you can't have but so much insurance, and this one doesn't come with a premium. Like, hey, right fast, we about to get together. We about to pray that we don't die tonight. You in? Yeah, I can do that. Even if you can't, you can. What you got to lose? Like, really, what do you have to lose under that circumstance? But that's just part of playing football is a whole lot of Jesus.
I'm curious from Texan fans, are you is this something like this going to make you not root for Foster now?
I don't think anybody will stop rooting for Arian Foster because people are pretty mercenary in their sporting interests, right? But I did have people when I sent the story out, and there's a lot of people who said this immediately. They're like, oh, he doesn't have faith. I guess that explains why he's been getting hurt so much. I have to ask a question. Like, is that really how it works? Like, I didn't grow up in church. Like, that isn't my bag. That isn't the thing I do. Is that really how it works? Like, you lose the faith and then all of a sudden you start getting hurt all the time? That seems like a real Old Testament sort of concept, doesn't it? But that's how a lot of people feel. That's what a lot of people are going to think. Because being a Christian in America is, by and large, the norm. Not everywhere, right? But by and large, being a Christian is the norm. Like, if you grow up in the South, being a Christian is absolutely the norm. And people don't question whether or not you're a Christian. They don't, because everybody is. Like, that's the thought process. But, man, it gets wild when people find out that you aren't. You know, like, you get into certain circles and, like, higher in the class strata, especially in, like, highly educated areas like academia and stuff like that. It doesn't wind up being so much of an issue. But, like, regular rank and file people, like my daddy grew up, his father was a preacher. And then he just decided that wasn't the way that he was going, right? Like, he was not on board with that. And he would tell me stories about, like, meeting people and everything would be all good, and somehow that would come up, and they would look at him and say, you know, I thought you were a good person. Like, right up until that point, like, they thought he was a good person because that's necessary on a lot of people's checklist for you to be a good person is that you've accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Like, I've lived that my whole life. It's a trip, man. Like, that's something I don't think that people who are religious, I'm telling you, they'll let you slide. Like, even as bad as things have gotten in this country with the way that Muslims are perceived, the median American, not on the fringe, but the median American has more respect for a Muslim. I say a median American has more respect for a Muslim on September the 12th of 2001 than they do for somebody who says that they are not religious. They give you that kind of that vague spiritual sort, that spiritual tag. And when people start talking about I'm not religious, I'm just spiritual, a lot of times I do think that's people that's trying to dodge that hard answer because they know they feel like the judgment is going to come the other way. But now, there was a certain boldness to Arian Foster saying this in front of people, especially if he's the sort of dude who grew up in the church. Because if you didn't grow up in the church, you're not rejecting anything. Like, you're not really pushing something away. It's like somebody's bringing you something new, and you're like, nah, I'm good. Like, Arian Foster's like, yo, I've done this, I've tried it, and I ain't feeling it. Y'all can keep it. People take that very, very, very personally. So it's not going to be a general problem for him. It's not like people aren't going to cheer for him when he scores touchdowns. The issue is going to be when he doesn't score touchdowns. That's what it's going to be. Like that's when the issue is going to come up. And then there's going to be a lot of people conflicted because they think God decides who wins sporting events. And then if Arian Foster goes for 250 yards, how's that work? Anybody got an explanation for that one? Like that's going to leave a few people confused. But nobody's going to have beef with them. But I'm telling you, this is the sort of thing that affects you for real in regular life. I will say this, though. This is just kind of a general observation on life. Like in Kuhn's piece, he has this passage also about Foster where he says, he has tossed out sly hints in the past just enough to give himself wink and a nod deniability, but he recently decided to become a public face of the non-religious. Moved by the testimonials of celebrity atheists like comedian Bill Maher and magicians Penn and Teller, Foster has joined a national campaign by the non-profit group Openly Secular, which plans to use this story to increase awareness and acceptance of non-believers, especially in sports. I just want to say, if you want to decide that you're going to make a social stand of sorts, I don't think I would say that I was moved by Penn and Teller. That's just me. I think Arian Foster had to read that and be like, damn, Tim, you couldn't think of nobody else? There's got to be somebody else who doesn't go to church. But he mentioned Bill Maher, and that's what I found to be funny. I think mentioning Maher is something to me that I thought was interesting about Foster. Because putting Foster and Maher in the same sentence just because they don't, practice religion or don't believe in God, those are two completely different things. Because Foster seems to have a basic, if this is what you want to do, that's fine, I'll let you live. But this is not what I do. Well, Bill Maher is absolutely patronizing toward people who practice religion. Like, that one never works. You can't be that guy. Or you can decide to be that guy, but no matter what kind of jerk you choose to be, people are going to treat you as a jerk. That's just kind of how that rolls. Foster seems to be on the live and let live. So I think it's very interesting that he made the decision to come out and do this, and the fact that he thinks that this is important enough to do, because there's going to be a lot of people that chastise him. There's a lot of people, I think, that also appreciate him. And the people who appreciate him are probably going to do so silently, because they're going to see Arian Foster get chastised.
Bomani.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, apparently somebody recently realized that women existed.
What?
Yeah, well, like women that like football, right? Like apparently that seems to have been the case. Like in recent years, the NFL has ramped up their efforts to try to attract more women as customers, right? That's been a game that they have tried to play. Although I've heard people say that they felt that the old strategy for making sports more attractive to women was shrink it and pink it. That's basically it. So, take a football jersey, make it smaller, and make it pink. Boom. For women. And you got to admit that for a long time, that was what they did. But either way, you want to give people credit for trying, right? I think it's what everybody would like to do, ideally, is to give people credit for trying. So, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers decided that they wanted to attract more women as customers or to serve those women as customers. Now, they're ignoring the fact that if these women are fans of their football team, maybe it's because they like football. Maybe, just maybe, it's because they like football, and perhaps along the way pick some things up. But no, they have a promotion that is called RED, the Buccaneers Women's Movement. Yes. Let me show you what's on the screen here right now for this women's movement, Shannon. I'm looking at USA Today's blog. And they took a screen cap of the red term of the week, because apparently part of this is terms to teach women about football. This week's term, play clock. And under the headline of red term of the week, play clock, there's a question: what does the term play clock mean?
And this is just for women. This is just for women.
It's on Buccaneers.com. One thing I hate about football fans is football fans act like football is so complex in order to enjoy. Like, it's so hard to understand, like y'all don't enjoy. Like, y'all ain't the ones that's watching it. Like, if it was that hard to watch football, how come you're able to do it? Like, if you had to stop and hold somebody's hand and to walk them through all that stuff, how are you able to figure this out? Like, you know, the only thing that's really hard to figure out about football, if you're, like, really new to it, is this whole notion of downs. Like, once you get past the downs, it's pretty much all downhill. After that, it's all just little stuff and, like, little rules. But most of y'all don't know half the damn rules. Y'all just like watching football. Like, that's it. But anytime it gets to a point of talking about women and watching sports, I am blown away by how many people think that women are just, like, incapable of learning in general, but incapable of learning about sports in particular. Like, the only role that it seems like people are especially comfortable with when it comes to women in sports is cheering, basically. Sleeping with the players and cheering for a game that they don't exactly understand. Like, that's the notion that people have in their head about women when it comes to sports. And that's about as far as they can go. That's it. My suggestion would be, and I'm not some sort of business executive, like I don't have that sort of training, but my thought would be for NFL teams that if a woman is into football, she's probably into football for a lot of the same reasons that you're into football. Maybe, just maybe. But the Buccaneers, man, they had to go the extra mile with it. You want to hear some other planks of their program? Fashion tips. How to, talk about the team on Pinterest. I'm not making this up.
Is there anything up there about having the best Super Bowl party or something like that? Cater the best Super Bowl party?
There are suggestions of foods you can make. That is there. There are suggestions of foods you can make. Like, I'm looking at the page right now, and the picture, like, here's what they say. Bucks introduce Red Women's Movement. Buccaneers introduce Red, a brand new women's movement that will reinvent the female fan experience. Like, we're just going to make a whole new what?
All right, so I figured it out. I figured out when the Bucks decided to develop this Red program, they had a certain fan base in mind when it came to females, and that fan base sounded a little something like this.
Well, to be truthful, for me, nothing beats that exquisite moment of tension right before the play begins. As the muscular, sweaty football men get down on that line of scrimmage. There they is, eyeball to eyeball. Their breaths is coming out like steam from a big bull's nostrils. I just got 3 words to describe it. Delicious.
Yeah, that's pretty much how they see it. That's pretty much how they're looking at it. Listen to this, Shannon. Here's what they're going to do. Red will reinvent the female fan experience by providing insight into topics such as what goes on behind the scenes at game days at Raymond James Stadium, how to maximize their game day experience, how to blend Buccaneer pride with the latest NFL fashions, as well as tips on sharing their experiences and ideas via social media platforms such as Pinterest. Red members will also have access to exclusive networking events throughout the year designed to encourage interaction while providing practical advice on how to express their love for the Bucks into original design projects, fashion-forward team apparel, and creative culinary creations. Or maybe they just want to watch football. Maybe, just maybe, they just want to watch football. Hell, it's possible some of them just want to watch dudes in tight pants. Guess what? Nobody needs any help on how to do that.
Bomani.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt. Frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
Bomani.
Our next guest played 13 years in the NFL, won a Super Bowl ring with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and now he's here with us at ESPN. His name is Ryan Clark. Ryan, what's going on?
What's up, Bomani? How you doing, man?
Doing all right, man. You got to tell me, what's a better way to spend your August? Hanging out with us or hanging out with all those dudes in training camp?
Right now, for this time in my life, it's definitely hanging out with y'all.
I guess it wouldn't be till the game start that it would be the part that you missed, because I imagine training camp after a couple of years has got to get old, right?
You know what? Training camp was honestly my favorite part of the year because I hated the practice during the season because it was so boring and so tedious because you had to get ready, you know, to play the team on the weekend. So it was just scout team guys running the cards. At least in camp, you got to compete. And, you know, I miss that dorm room feel where you see the fellas every day. You get to hang out, you know, do stupid stuff that we didn't get to do, you know, anymore. Because once the season starts, I mean, it's work and then it's home. And so it was cool to kind of get away for a second and do that. I don't miss the heat, though, and I don't miss the practices. So it's about time for me to go.
But, Ryan, you can do the stupid stuff in Bristol, man. You can walk around and play pranks on people and all that stuff and just call it training camp. We got to get ready for football season, too.
Hey, man, I'm not up there trying to fool with HR, man. So I'm going to go and keep it cool.
All right, we're talking to Ryan Clark. Man, what did you think when you heard that Deshaun Jackson separated his shoulder on a blocking sled?
I thought that was
there we go.
Yeah, first of all, that's what I thought. But you know what, man? To me, though, it's just like that can't happen. Like, you got to figure out a way for that not to happen to Deshaun Jackson. So it's unfortunate, honestly, you know, for the Washington Redskins and for him. You don't want a guy like that, or he doesn't want to go down, first of all, at all, but definitely not in a blocking drill, and he's not a cat that's going to block anyway.
All right, and you played on that team. How you can spell out how important he is to that offense.
Oh, he's huge. Last year, you look at all the big plays he was able to make. He led the league in catches over 50 yards, and that was with struggling quarterbacks. So a lot of those things was all him. It was all talent. And so if they don't have him and you take that deep threat away, it's really going to hurt this team. But I think he'll be healthy when the season comes. He's not really tripping about missing practices anyway. He didn't want to do much of that throughout the year. So you know, he'll be fine. He'll be ready to go when it starts.
Well, let me ask you this: how much does it matter losing your deep threat if your quarterback is afraid to throw the ball deep?
Shots fired.
Not even shots. I mean, you watch like the Robert Griffin we saw late in the year. He did not have the confidence in the deep ball that we had before his legs had gotten hurt.
No, he really didn't. If you look at when he came back against Minnesota, which was his first game off of injury, he threw a lot of pretty deep balls. Two of them caught by Deshaun, and so I thought that was going to be the Robert we saw going throughout the year. I think his confidence just got shot. You hear during the week your coach is going out saying you're looking the wrong way, you're not taking the right drops, you're not going through the correct progressions. And I think Robert paid a little bit too much attention to that stuff, and he stopped doing what I think is one of the things he actually does well from the quarterback position, and that's just let the ball go. I mean, he has a very live arm, so hopefully he'll get back to doing it.
All right, we're talking to Ryan Clark, and, we hear a lot of stories about that team, and it's become, in large part because I think people just laugh now because Daniel Snyder just dominates what people think about them. But when you play for that team, does the chaos that we sense from the outside, did you feel that being on the roster?
You really didn't. I'll be honest. With me, because I was, older player, somebody looked at as a leader on the team, I really had a lot of conversations with, different coaches each week. I go talk to Sean McVay, who's offense coordinator, on Monday, and, Jay would call me in to, talk to me about different things. And so I guess I saw it differently than most people. But then I'd go home and sit at home and watch TV and listen to, the media talk about it. I guess that's who I am now, too. Listen to the media talk about it. It always seemed like it was so much more tumultuous when it came across on TV, but really within the building, other than the quarterbacks shuffling and, losing a lot of games, it didn't really feel like it had a lot going on.
All right, we're talking to Ryan Clark. I want to switch gears off the Redskins, and one of the interesting training camp topics has been Marcus Mariota and the fact that he has not thrown an interception in 6 practices.
Why do we care so much about that?
Well, I was about to ask you, what do you think when you hear how much people are talking about not throwing an interception in training camp?
And whether right or wrong, I don't know Marcus Mariota personally, but it does seem to me like being the almost anti-Jameis Winston or the other guy drafted with Jameis Winston or the opposite end of the spectrum of Jameis Winston, it always seems like we're trying to say very good things about Marcus Mariota. Not that he doesn't do a whole lot of things good. I mean, the guy won the Heisman Trophy, he led his team to the national championship. He was a really, really good, if not great, college player. But we're looking for things to search out and say good about him. At first it was about his work ethic and then about how hard he was studying and, how much he stayed in the film room. Now he hasn't thrown a pick through practice. Know why that's an issue? Because your first team should be able to get a pick off the rookie quarterback. That's the bigger issue to me, not the fact that he hasn't thrown any, because he cannot throw any maybe because he's being very cautious or he's not taking chances. There's no rush to really get after him, so he doesn't have to, throw the ball under pressure. I don't think it's as big a deal as we're making it to even be talking about it, but I really think being the anti-Jameis Winston is why we have all these feel-good stories about Marcus Mariota.
All right, we're talking to Ryan Clark. Let me ask you this. As a defensive back, there's a rookie quarterback that you'll be facing the next week in the regular season. How exciting is that for you guys in the DB room?
Oh, man, it's the best thing ever. It's like getting to play Jay Cutler that week.
Shots fired!
But for real, like, that's what – when we were in Pittsburgh, Coach LeBeau had some type of crazy record of, 18-1 or something like that against rookie quarterbacks. And, they just do have a tough time of throwing the ball to the guys on their team. It's hard to pick up the defenses. It's hard to understand how to operate, pro-style offenses. Even the really good ones turn the ball over a lot and struggle from that standpoint. And so, you get excited at any time you get an opportunity to get out there and confuse a young guy, and hopefully he throws a couple of footballs right to you.
So Jay Cutler was your favorite quarterback to go against? Like you knew Jay Cutler was coming? Was that the one when you felt like he was going to get on TV?
Well, I have friends who play, in the NFC North, and they legitimately say when they're going against Cutler, they're like, he's going to throw us 3. We just have to catch him.
All right, we're talking to Ryan Clark. Last question for you. You also played a long time with the Pittsburgh Steelers. How do you feel about them going into this year?
I feel good about them offensively, for sure. Being there with them in camp last week, was able to kind of sit in the meeting rooms and see where they were going defensively. Coach Tomlin is going to have a much bigger role in what this defense does this year, what type of strategy and how they approach the game schematically. And I think they're going to go more to a don't give up big plays defense because we know we can score points on offense. I think it'll move toward a 4-3 a little more, so you get Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt in positions to rush the passer. This team, to me, is, along with Baltimore Ravens, the team that's going to compete to win the AFC North, and they have an opportunity to make a deep playoff run if they can find a couple of playmakers in new spots on defense.
Well, how big a deal is that going from Dick LeBeau to Tomlin? Because Dick, they've run that 3-4 defense in Pittsburgh since 1982 or somewhere around that. Tomlin came from the Tony Dungy school, that Tampa 2 defense, before he got to Pittsburgh. So if they go to more 4-3, that sounds like a big change for what the Steelers have done literally my whole life.
Yeah, it'll be a big change in the base defense, meaning the defense that they play when the other team just is in a regular formation with 2 wide receivers, tight end, maybe 2 tight ends sometimes. But the nickel package has always been a 4-3 model or base because now you have 5 defensive backs in the game. You take out a lineman, and you really rush 4-3 using one of the outside linebackers as a defensive end. So it's kind of been part of what they've done or what we did when I was in Pittsburgh, just not practiced that way or just not on paper called a 4-3. And in today's football, Bomani, you play nickel packages or sub packages with extra defensive backs over 50% of the time. So I think they've seen that they can be successful in doing that. And when other teams force them into it now, I think they'll be more comfortable because that is the way that they're practicing.
All right, Ryan Clark, ESPN NFL analyst. You're getting good at this, my man. Thanks so much for joining us.
I'm trying, man. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, man. You too.
Bomani.
It's NFL time. Well, it's not really the NFL time. It's just close enough to NFL time that we can take any excuse we can find to talk about football. That's basically what we do on these training camp stories, because just because there's nothing to talk about doesn't mean I don't have to come and talk about nothing. Anyway, the Buffalo Bills look like a pretty good team, except quarterback. Right? Like, everybody knows it. The whole thing, like, what about them is not on hit other than the quarterback situation? That seems to be the only – and they got receivers, too. They have got receivers. They got Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins is, by the time this is all over, it's going to be insane. Like, they've got it. They just don't have a quarterback. And not having a quarterback while you have everything else is a bit of a problem. And this is Doug Whaley on WGR 550 in Buffalo explaining what the situation is for the Buffalo Bills.
We told every candidate we're almost in quarterback purgatory. We're good enough that we're not going to have the first or second pick. We hope we're not in that position. Hopefully now we're drafting in the teens and the 20s and the 30s. So you're not going to get those college guys that are coming out. Franchise quarterbacks hitting the free agent market, name them, right? Unless they have an injury. Yep. So it's going to be an onus on our scouting staff to find a guy in the second or third or lower first round, second or third round.
Now, I'm glad he made that last point, that it becomes on them to find a guy later in the first round or in the second round or something like that to get Buffalo where they need to be. He's absolutely right, though. They are in quarterback purgatory because they reached on a quarterback. And they did it 2 years ago when they took E.J. Manuel. Now, Shannon, you and I have both watched a lot of ACC football over the years. What was your reaction when E.J. Manuel was not only a first-round pick, but the first quarterback taken in that draft?
After I stopped laughing or before?
I sat in my house and laughed. Like, I literally guffawed. I could not stop laughing. I could not believe anybody saw the same games that we saw and took that dude in the first round.
He must have had a great interview.
People love him. That's really what it comes down to.
He must have an outstanding resume.
People love him. He is like leader of men type stuff. People absolutely love him, and the Bills went in that direction. And a big part of why he ultimately had to get benched last year, because I don't think E.J. would be a terrible quarterback in the league necessarily. He just wasn't a first-round pick. You know what the problem is with E.J. Manuel? E.J. Manuel looks like he should be a lot better than he is. Like, physically, that's the quarterback that you want. That height, that size, he's mobile enough. He just doesn't really have that much of an arm, or at the very least, he doesn't like to use it.
And the mechanics are a little shaky.
Yeah, like that's the thing. I mean, that's the case with them. But the issue that they were having last year when they benched him is he was throwing dudes into injury. Like, he was that guy where he was throwing passes into places that were going to get guys killed. Like, they had to look at the safety of the wide receivers and then put them on the bench. It's hard to win your job back when your problem is you're going to get me killed. Like, that's not something I would let go.
Not a lot of support in the locker rooms.
No. Look, y'all do what y'all got to do. Y'all do what y'all got to do. So they got E.J. Manuel, they got Matt Castle. Like, that's just where they are right now. But is finding a quarterback late in the draft that hard? Like, I think finding a quarterback, generally speaking, is hard, right? But like we can go through the league right now. Like, I'm looking at the list of teams in the league. We can go quarterback up by quarterback. The Patriots got Brady in the 6th round. Like, that's not the norm, but they got Brady in the 6th round. You saw what happened when the Bills reached to take E.J. Manuel, right? Not a good look. You can't reach. Miami took Tannehill in the top 10, right? Tannehill's just a dude to me. Like, I hear people say that it's going to get better, but Tannehill's just a dude to me. The Jets took Geno Smith in the 2nd round. Of course, that didn't work. That hasn't worked out so well. I don't think that he's done necessarily. Like, once again, Vinny Testaverde stuck around long enough to get halfway decent. Like, if they let you stick around long enough, if they let you stick around long enough, you'll figure it out. And Geno's shown flashes of being good. Ben Roethlisberger's the 12th pick, but that's not like the top 5. Andy Dalton has his flaws, but he's a guy that's thrown 30 touchdown passes a couple of times in the league. They got him in the second round. Joe Flacco's the guy that got drafted late in the second round. You can go all around here. I don't love Derek Carr, but the Raiders do, and they got him in the second round. Tony Romo was undrafted. Like, there are quarterbacks that you can win Super Bowls with. You don't have to get them in the top 5. I also don't think that in this league you necessarily have to have a great quarterback to win. You got to have a good one. You don't have to have a great one. You have to have a quarterback that's good enough that you don't spend all your time thinking about what other quarterback that you can get. So take Teddy Bridgewater, for example. I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is ever going to be a great quarterback. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback, but he's not going to be an Andrew Luck type of quarterback. And that's enough. You can build a team around that.
Yeah, you don't need a quarterback. You don't need to win because of your quarterback, but you can't have a team where you're winning in spite of your quarterback.
Right, and you have to have a quarterback that can be the reason that you win games from time to time. Like, there are going to be situations that your quarterback has to be able to go out and win games for you. So I always found Peyton Manning to be an interesting case in this way because the Colts would ask Peyton Manning to go win games, go win games, go win games. The whole offense is yours, Peyton. Go out there and win games for us. And then Peyton Manning would do that, but Peyton Manning didn't have that big arm. Like, Peyton Manning was not that physically talented. So you would get to the playoffs, and now those defensive backs are better. Like, we weeded out the scrubs. Peyton is a beast against those scrubs. Now we've weeded out the scrubs, and now your quarterback has to be able to go make this thing happen. Not some read and react, not we're just going to out-scheme you. You got to go make this thing happen, and that's not what you want Peyton Manning to do. Peyton Manning's an algorithm. You put it into his equation, he spits out what to do. If you need to do something outside of that, he's not your guy. So, yeah, clearly a team has won a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning, but the shortcomings that we point to of Peyton Manning in the postseason are why you need a guy that can go win a game for you. You don't need him to win 12 a year, but he's got to be able to go win a game for you. Alex Smith can't really go win a game for you. I think we saw the one playoff game that he could go win for you, and he did it in that game against the Saints, the divisional playoff round in 2011, where they called that crazy sweep around the end. I mean, he went out and won that game, but you can't count on Alex Smith to do that sort of thing. You don't need a great quarterback, though. Joe Flacco can go win a game for you because you have Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is a pretty good quarterback, but he's got that arm. He's got that arm. Like, you could go find a guy. He's not going to be perfect. You're going to have to work around him. But this idea that you got to have a top 5 pick, it's a weird case, but Aaron Rodgers went 25th. Like, it happens. The problem is you don't want to wind up in that situation where you're going into the draft and you're like, I can't leave here without a quarterback, and you're picking at 18.
That's like the 2 o'clock let out at the club.
Yes.
It's like the lights come on, and you're like, I got to leave here with something.
Yeah, that's what you don't want. That's a great way to catch something. Like, that's not what you want. Maybe you want to be in a position to package some stuff to move up. I will say this for the Bills, though. If you're in quarterback purgatory and you don't have the package of picks necessary to move up to draft a quarterback, but you did have them to move up to draft a wide receiver, now you know why they had to get them a new general manager. Like, there it is right there. Or is this the guy that did that trade? This isn't the guy that did the Sammy Watkins trade, is it? Oh, so it's his own damn fault.
But he's not the one who drafted Manuel, though.
Gotcha. Phil, that's all he's got for you.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Weeknights from 9 to 11 Eastern or on demand at ESPNradio.com.